The message arrived at 6:42 a.m., just as I was finishing a call with our Miami location over a supply chain issue. It was from my Aunt Lorraine, the subject line in bold all caps. No failures allowed. I stared at the screen, the steam from my coffee curling around my fingers as if it too wanted to recoil from the words. The email itself was brief, cold, precise. Emma, I'm sending this privately to spare you the embarrassment. As you may have heard, the Parker family reunion will be hosted this summer at the Grand Elm in Boston. We've arranged an exclusive buyout. Given your continued alternative lifestyle and lack of traditional success, we feel it's best you sit this one out. No failures allowed. Aunt Lorraine. I read it twice, then a third time. I don't know why. I already knew what it said, but something in me refused to believe that after 12 years of silence, this was the message that broke through. Not an apology, not an invitation, just a reminder that I was still the embarrassment. The irony? The Grand Elm was my hotel. I owned it. Every suite, every doorknob, every chandelier they'd admire with champagne in hand. They'd made the reservation under a corporate shell, without realizing that Emma Collins, the black sheep, the hotel maid as they once called me, was the name behind the company that ran it. Growing up a Parker meant one thing: perfection was the baseline. My father, Harold Parker, was a spinal surgeon to Olympic athletes. My mother, a Harvard-trained lawyer, once negotiated a pharmaceutical merger on the back of a napkin in the Hamptons. My older brother, Nathan, went into finance, made his first million before I graduated high school. My sister, Camille, joined a high-profile litigation firm, married a judge, and had twins on a fast track to Ivy League preschools. And then there was me, Emma, the artistic one, which, in Parker speak, meant failure with a hobby. While Nathan was dissecting financial models and Camille was writing amicus briefs, I was building blanket forts that doubled as pop-up tea rooms for neighborhood kids. I wasn't looking for medals, I was designing experiences. I didn't want applause, I wanted presence. But that didn't fit the Parker definition of achievement: status, prestige, titles. At 17, I announced that I'd been accepted to Cornell's School of Hotel Administration. I still remember the silence at dinner that night. It was louder than shouting. "Hospitality?" my mother finally asked, swirling her wine. "You mean hotel work?" "It's one of the top business programs in the country," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Do you want to spend your life fluffing pillows for other people?" Nathan added, not even looking up from his phone. "You're choosing servitude," my father muttered, "not leadership." I left the next morning. I didn't take the SUV they bought me. I didn't cash the check they offered for a gap year to rethink. I went alone, with 2 suitcases and a laminated quote from Maya Angelou in my wallet. "People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." Cornell was brutal. Not academically, I held my own, but emotionally. Everyone else seemed to have a safety net. I had ramen, double shifts, and pride. I worked nights at a roadside inn off Route 79, rotating between front desk, laundry, and making eggs at 5 a.m. At 19, my father gave me an ultimatum over the phone: "Transfer to pre-law, or we cut you off." "I'll manage," I said. "Emma, then cut me off." He did. I survived. No, I endured. And eventually, I excelled. 12 years later, I own Collins Hospitality Group, 12 boutique properties in 6 major U.S. cities. And the Grand Elm in Boston? That's my crown jewel. So when I saw Aunt Lorraine's message, when I read "No failures allowed," and realized she'd chosen my house to parade our family's fake perfection, I didn't cry. I laughed. Because they thought they were booking a venue to celebrate success. And they were. Mine. I forwarded the email to Diana Wallace, my GM at the Grand Elm. "Flag this reservation. We'll be handling it personally." 10 minutes later, my assistant Rachel stepped into my office, holding a matcha smoothie and a raised eyebrow. "You look like someone just insulted your entire life." "They tried," I said. I handed her the phone. She read the message in silence, then blinked. "Wait, Your family booked this hotel? Yep. And they don't know? Nope. She glanced around the sleek, light-drenched office we were standing in. The skyline of Boston gleamed beyond the glass, and the framed Wall Street Journal profile on the wall bore my name in 36-point font. Rachel grinned. So, what's the plan? I leaned back, steepling my fingers. They want exclusivity, formality, and recognition. She nodded. And I'll give them exactly that. But beneath the calm planning, a war was raging inside me. Part of me wanted to make a scene. Crash the gala in a couture gown, walk up to Aunt Lorraine mid-toast, and whisper, "How's the wine? I own it." Another part wanted to stay hidden, let the staff dazzle them, and send the final invoice to their doorstep with a note. Courtesy of your failure. But the strongest voice in me, the one I'd spent a decade cultivating, whispered something different. Show them who you are, but do it your way. If you've ever been left out after giving it your all, type 1. Your story deserves to be heard. Rachel looked at me from across the desk. Are you going to attend? I stared at the glowing screen, rereading the reservation file. 60 rooms, full ballroom, Saturday night gala. I won't attend as their niece, I said finally. I'll attend as their landlord. At exactly 9:04 a.m. the next morning, I received a message from our legal advisor marked urgent. Subject, employee breach, potential internal leak. The attached document showed a thread of emails between one of our junior operations analysts, Kyle Baxter, and someone at Vireo Hotels, our rising competitor. The messages weren't subtle. Kyle had forwarded detailed reports on staffing costs, proprietary guest analytics, and, most alarming, projections from our newest Miami property. Happy to share more once that regional director role opens up. Just need confirmation that I'm your guy, Kyle had written, followed by a smiley face. My blood chilled. I stared at the screen, rage burning beneath the surface, but I didn't scream. I didn't call him into my office. I did what I always did. I documented, quiet, precise, intentional. Because if Kyle thought betraying me would earn him a corner office, he was about to learn what betrayal looked like from someone who owns the building. That same day, I flew to Boston, arriving just as a soft fog rolled in from the harbor. From the penthouse suite of the Grand Elm, I could see Beacon Hill bathed in silver light. The Parker estate wasn't far. I wondered if Aunt Lorraine was sipping her tea, utterly unaware that her fate now sat in my inbox. Diana Wallace, the hotel's general manager, knocked twice before entering. "Morning," she said, holding a sleek folder. "Full itinerary for the Parker family. They've requested early check-ins for the executive suites, a customized cocktail hour in the rooftop garden, and monogrammed robes for all guests. Also, your aunt insists on having someone named Cecil fluff her pillows." "Tell her we'll make sure Cecil is trained in pillow psychology," I deadpanned. Diana smiled thinly, then paused. "Are we telling the staff who they are to you?" "No," I said. "They don't need to know anything beyond, this group is high profile. Treat them like royalty, but don't worship them. Just deliver excellence." She nodded. "Understood." "And Kyle Baxter?" I added, tapping the email. "Flag his keycard. He's to be escorted out of HQ by week's end. But first, send his full comms history to legal. We'll let Vireo know exactly what kind of character they're onboarding." Later that afternoon, I walked the service corridors of the Grand Elm, places I used to dream about when I was scrubbing floors in Newark. These back hallways weren't glossy, but they were mine. I ran my fingers along the wall, checking for imperfections no one else would notice. Every inch of this building reflected what I had built, layer by layer, crisis by crisis. Ms. Collins, Ryan West, our head of security, joined me near the control room. "CCTV is prepped. I've flagged the Parker family members' arrivals, and all entry logs are being recorded. Also, your mother's checked in. She asked if the owner ever makes appearances at the Elm." "Not usually," I said, eyes on the monitor. "Good," he nodded, "because this might get awkward fast." We both turned as the doors opened on screen. There she was, Aunt Lorraine, in full designer glory, gliding across the marble lobby with her Louis Vuitton luggage and diamond-studded heels. Behind her, her husband Theodore, 2 cousins, and their personal assistant carrying a 4-foot garment bag like it was the Holy Grail. "Watch," I said. We listened as she approached the front desk. We reserved the Adams suite, but I heard the Jefferson suite has a better view. We'll take that instead. Diana, on screen, handled it like a pro. "I'm afraid the Jefferson is already occupied, Mrs. Parker Bennett, but the Adams has been tailored exactly to your preferences, including your favorite peony-scented pillow mist." "Do you know who I am?" Aunt Lorraine huffed. "Yes, ma'am. And I'm sure the owner, who is very hands-on, wanted to make sure your stay was flawless." There was a flicker of confusion in her eyes. Then satisfaction. Recognition of status. But still not recognition of me. By early evening, the rest of the family began trickling in, each one acting like they owned the place. Nathan boomed into his phone about $1 billion fund while tipping the bellboy $5 without eye contact. Camille walked past the front desk without acknowledgement, barking at someone about SCOTUS precedents. Cousin Stephanie rolled her eyes at a perfectly polite concierge. I took it all in from the surveillance room. My face glowed faintly from the monitors, but my chest stayed tight. These were the people who had laughed when I said I wanted to design experiences. The ones who told me, year after year, that Emma's still finding herself. And now, they were walking through the world I had built, as if it was made for them. Ryan turned to me. "You good?" I nodded slowly. "I'm just making sure the mirrors are clean." He gave me a confused look. "So they see exactly who they are when the moment comes," I clarified. I stepped out into the lobby for a final walkthrough and nearly collided with Stephanie, fresh from the bar, cocktail in hand. "Oh, I'm sorry." She blinked at me. "Wait, do I know you?" My hair was different, my wardrobe now luxury. I carried myself differently. But her brow furrowed like she almost recognized me. "No, I don't think so," I replied, smiling. "You enjoying your stay?" She smirked. "It's all right. I expected more elegance. But I guess you can't trust these boutique places like the Four Seasons." "Some boutique places can surprise you," I said gently. Her smile faded. "Right. Well, have a good night." "You too," I said. "Ms. Parker." She froze, turned, but I'd already walked away, heels clicking softly against the marble floor. Have you ever worked behind the scenes while others assumed you were nothing? Type 2 if you felt underestimated. Back in my suite, Diana handed me the finalized itinerary. "They've requested access to the ballroom for rehearsals and lighting tests. Also, Aunt Lorraine left a note asking if someone from housekeeping could show her how to use the espresso machine in her suite." I laughed, dark and low. "Tell her I'll personally demonstrate it." It started with a headline, one I hadn't authorized. "Emma Collins, the quiet force behind America's most exclusive hotels." Forbes, front page, published the same morning as the Parker family gala. I froze as the alert popped up on my phone. My face, elegant, sharp-jawed, arms folded in front of the Legacy Hotel, took up half the screen. I hadn't given that interview. Digging deeper, I realized it came from a leak. Our Miami expansion plans had triggered some investors to go public early. My photo came from a 3-year-old PR kit. Still, the feature was polished, thorough, and impossible to ignore. My phone buzzed again, this time with a message from Camille. "You finally made the news. Congrats, I guess. Didn't realize you were actually doing something legit with hotels." A backhanded compliment if there ever was one. But more importantly, it meant the news had reached them. And yet, no one said anything when I arrived at the gala. The ballroom glowed in candlelight and gold. Hundreds of tea roses sat along tables draped in imported Italian linen. A quartet played Bach beneath a crystal chandelier. I had personally selected every detail, down to the chair width and ambient scent. I stood at the back, observing the room like a conductor before the overture. The Parkers were here in full force, 60 of them, impeccably dressed and perfectly posed. They looked like a Vanity Fair spread, if the camera only captured surface. Aunt Lorraine held court at the head table, swirling her champagne like royalty. Uncle Theodore adjusted his cufflinks while recounting a tennis match with a sitting senator. Camille's children practiced their Mandarin with a tutor flown in for the weekend. Nathan made a show of checking stock prices mid-toast. It was stunning. It was hollow. And it was built on my foundation. As dinner service began, I watched from the mezzanine, a private balcony concealed behind sheer drapes. "They really don't recognize you?" Diana asked beside me, eyes scanning the crowd. "Not even a flicker," I said. "I'm not who they remember, and I'm not who they wanted me to become." Down below, servers moved like clockwork. Every wine pour timed. Every plate turned to precision. My staff was executing a masterclass in luxury dining. "You sure you don't want me to prep the reveal now?" Diana asked. "Not yet," I said. "They're still too full of themselves." Halfway through the main course, I slipped quietly into the ballroom, dressed in a navy velvet gown that hugged my frame with quiet confidence. I moved through the room like a guest, smiling, listening, vanishing before questions formed. I passed my mother, who barely glanced up. I passed Camille, who was laughing loudly at something she hadn't really heard. I passed Stephanie, who said, "You look familiar," then immediately turned back to her glass of Merlot. It was like being invisible and painfully obvious at the same time. Then Aunt Lorraine rose. A soft chime rang from her spoon against the flute. The room fell silent. "Family," she said, voice crisp and clear. "It's not often we gather like this, with all 3 generations under one roof. And what a roof, I must say." She gestured vaguely at the ballroom ceiling, not realizing the owner was a few feet away. She continued, "The Parker name stands for excellence, for ambition, for results. We are lawyers, doctors, investors, policymakers. We are the backbone of this country's success." People nodded. Toasts clinked. I stared straight ahead, heart thudding. "And while not all our relatives could be here tonight," she added, her tone sharp as a scalpel, "we celebrate only those who uphold the values that got us here." She raised her glass. "To legacy, discipline, and living up to the Parker name." My mother added softly, "To those who chose the high road." Camille followed with a smirk. "And not room service." The laughter was polite, controlled but pointed. My chest felt tight, not from sadness, not from rage, just clarity. This wasn't just exclusion, it was erasure, a carefully curated performance where I didn't exist. Diana looked at me from across the room and raised one eyebrow in question. I nodded. It was time. I walked calmly to the front of the room, heels tapping softly against the polished floors. A hush fell as I approached the head table. Aunt Lorraine blinked. "Can we help you?" she asked, still not recognizing me. "Yes," I said. "I understand there was a concern earlier about the wine pairing." I gestured toward the service team. "Who exactly are you?" Nathan cut in. "I'm Emma," I said clearly, "owner of the Grand Elm and the Parker Hospitality Group." The silence was thunderous. Forks paused mid-air. Glasses froze halfway to lips. My father turned pale. Camille opened her mouth, then closed it. My mother looked like she'd swallowed glass. "I hope," I continued, "that our service tonight reflects the standards your family deserves." Aunt Lorraine's champagne flute trembled. "This is some kind of joke." "No," I said. "This is what success looks like when no one's watching. This is what 12 years of silence built." Have you ever had to stand silently in a room where you weren't invited, only to realize you owned it? If yes, type 3. You're not alone. Camille stood slowly, her voice cutting through the room. "You own this? But you were barely making rent. You lived in a moldy studio apartment." I turned to her. "Yes. And while you were arguing about motions and court calendars, I was building something real. Something that makes people feel seen." Diana approached from behind, handing Camille a press packet. "Forbes, Fortune, Inc. Please feel free to read about the maid who became a mogul." Camille's hand trembled as she took it. My mother's lips parted. "Why didn't you tell us?" I stared straight into her eyes. "Because you never asked." The next morning, I received a calendar invite. Subject, private conversation, garden terrace. Organizer, Harold and Elaine Parker. Time, 11 a.m. sharp. No message, no emojis. Just names I hadn't seen on my schedule in over a decade. My parents. I sat frozen, still in my sweet robe, toast untouched. Last night's gala had broken something open, shattered the image they'd all so carefully curated. But whether it was curiosity, guilt, or calculated recovery, I wasn't sure. I accepted the invite anyway. At 11 hour on the dot, I stepped onto the garden terrace. My parents were already seated on the far end, like they were posing for a silent magazine shoot about estranged elegance. My father wore the same tailored navy blazer I remembered from childhood. My mother's hands were folded in her lap, fingers laced, nails perfect. Only now, I noticed her rings weren't symmetrical anymore. Her wedding band had been moved to the right hand. Emma, my father said first. It was jarring. He never used my name unless it was followed by a correction. Mom, Dad. I took the chair across from them. A server appeared with tea. No one spoke until he left. My mother exhaled sharply. I don't know where to begin. Start anywhere, I said quietly. There was a long pause. Then my father looked at me. Not through me, not past me, but at me. We owe you an apology. He cleared his throat. Many, in fact. My mother nodded. We were wrong about a lot of things. I waited. I didn't fill the silence for them like I used to. I'd learned to live with silence and make it work for me. I don't think we understood what you were building, my father said. What you were sacrificing to build it. It's not just about the hotels, my mother added. It's about you, who you are. We didn't see it. I leaned forward. Why? Why didn't you see me? Her voice cracked. Because we were terrified. We thought if you didn't follow the map, you'd get lost. And if you failed, it would be our fault. So we tried to force you back onto the road we knew. That's not protection, I said softly. That's control. He nodded slowly. You're right. They didn't ask for forgiveness, and I didn't offer it. Not yet. But it was a beginning. A different tone. For once, they weren't performing. They were present, flawed, uncomfortable, and real. I didn't need their approval anymore. But maybe, just maybe, I could accept their effort. When I returned to my suite, I found a note slid under the door. From Camille. I owe you one hell of a conversation. Rooftop lounge, 8 p.m. At sunset, the rooftop bar glowed with amber light. Camille sat at the far end, her heels kicked off under the table, nursing an old-fashioned. I joined her wordlessly. I don't know how you did it, she said, not looking at me. How you stood there last night, so composed. I've had practice, I replied. She gave a dry laugh. I deserved worse. You all did, I said. But that's not the point. Camille turned to face me fully now. Her eyes, once sharp with judgment, were tired. I've been chasing promotions, court victories, and headlines, but nothing sticks. Nothing means anything. Your face last night, it wasn't just revenge. It was peace. It's not always peace, I admitted. But it's freedom. She nodded. I envy that. Have you ever stopped chasing someone else's dream to build your own? If yes, type 4. You deserve to be proud of that. Over the next 2 days, cracks began to show in the Parker Foundation. Nathan confronted my father over business ethics he had long swallowed. Camille admitted she'd been lying about her perfect marriage. Even Stephanie, brittle as ever, apologized for calling me just a housekeeper in front of her friends back in college. I didn't respond with bitterness. I listened, not because they deserved it, but because I no longer needed to prove anything. I had already won the only battle that mattered, the one with myself. The biggest shock came Monday morning. Aunt Lorraine didn't check out with the rest of the family. She had remained cloistered in the Jefferson suite, ordering elaborate room service but refusing all staff interaction. Ryan texted me, "She hasn't spoken a word, just signed the bill and left an envelope with your name. Inside, a handwritten note, short, almost elegant. Emma, I underestimated you. I won't again. L. It wasn't an apology, but it was a shift. For someone like her, that was an earthquake. 1 week later, I stood inside our original Chicago property, the Legacy, preparing for a private dinner. Not for investors, not for press, for my people. The chef who stayed with me through the Miami project. My first Cornell roommate who once lent me $200 for textbooks. Ryan, Diana, Sophia, the friends who saw my worth before any family member did. I raised a glass. To the people who didn't need a gala to see me, who didn't measure my value by a title, who stayed when I had nothing but vision. You are my real legacy. As we clinked glasses, I caught sight of the skyline outside the terrace window. Somewhere out there, the Parker name was still being whispered with reverence. But it no longer defined me. I had my own name, and they could never erase it. A week later, I received an invitation, this time from the American Hospitality Guild. They wanted to induct me into the National Hall of Hospitality Excellence. The event would be televised. The keynote? Me. I stared at the invitation for a long moment, then smiled. Time to tell the world, on my own terms.